My gosh, so excited. Here we go again. I'm so happy to have you back. I imagine a number of my listener darlings have already heard your episode, but if you wouldn't mind, and it'll be in the show notes as well. So once you all finish this one, head on down and listen to that one as well. But for those of the people who are new, could you tell them a little bit about you and how you came to do what you're doing?
Yeah. So thank you so much, Meg, for having me back. I love our chats. This
Yes.
is so energizing.
Yes.
I'm Sarah Lovell, and I'm an executive function and ADHD coach. And sometimes people immediately know what that means, and they're like, oh my gosh, let me pick your brain.
Yes.
And sometimes people are like, what are you talking
What do you
about?
mean?
What is that? So, executive functioning, I'll just start with like a quick definition of what that is for if that's a new term for people or like, oh, I think I know what that is, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Executive functioning is basically the high level skills that your brain needs every single day to do essentially everything that we're doing. I think people think about it as just being work or school, but it's so much more. It's hobbies, it's self care, it's doing the things you want to do. So, those skills are things like planning, organizing, prioritizing, managing your time, getting started on things. But it's also like some bigger skills like noticing and regulating your emotions, noticing the way that your brain is thinking, like the thinking about thinking, metacognition, things that every single person uses in their day to day life. And some people have more challenges finding the right tools or systems to support those skills.
Mm-hmm.
And so I help those people, whether they have ADHD or not, basically learn about their brain and build a new toolbox. Because we were all given the exact same set of tools in K through 12, like write your to-do list, put it on your calendar,
Yes.
set an alarm on your phone. And like those are great foundational skills, but they don't work for everybody. They're not enough for most people.
Mhm.
And they don't really align with a lot of people's brains who are seeking more dopamine and looking for more creative ways to do things.
Yeah.
So that's a long, windy definition of like what an executive function coach is. And I support, so a lot of times people think, oh, executive function ADHD coach, you must work with kids. No, I do not.
I get that
I
a lot. Oh, great. So you can see my 3-year-old. Like, first of all, no, no, so many reasons, no.
that's there are so many amazing people who work with kids, and I'm so like I'm happy to refer you to other
Yes.
executive function ADHD coaches, but I do not work with children. I work with adults. I
Yes.
work with college students and people in adulthood who basically have burnt out using tools and systems that don't work for them. And so they're like, okay, this is not sustainable anymore. I can't keep going like this. Something
Mhm.
needs to change. And so I love helping people at various life stages, whether it's a 19-year-old freshman in college or a 45-year-old business owner who is like, I can't juggle everything anymore. Like,
Yes.
please come up with some new systems.
Yeah.
That's what I love about executive function coaching. And I had somebody ask me this. They were like, am I too old to learn? I'm like, no, you can,
No.
anybody you can learn new skills, you can learn new tools, you can make these sustainable adjustments to your life at any point in time.
Yes.
Um, and it's like building a muscle. It takes repetition, it takes practice. So I love helping people kind of like learn about themselves and make these like sustainable changes so that life feels better.
Hmm. Mm. I love it so much. You mentioned burnout earlier, and literally my blog, well, not the day that this is out, but go to the blog and go back and find it. My blog post of the day that you and I are recording is literally, are you procrastinating or are you burnt out? And I think it's such an interesting thing. You mentioned the burnout piece, and for us, and it's certainly very rarely is any one thing or one thing. It could be both.
Mm-hmm.
But being able to be intentional about like recognizing some of that burnout and what does that look like and how does it feel when we've spun our wheels too much in certain ways.
Yeah. And I think burnout is huge because, especially the clients I'm working with, they've just been working so much harder. Like, I met with somebody this week and he was like, I have been working 2 to 3 times as hard. I
Yes,
would probably venture a guess that he's working 10 times as hard sometimes
yes,
to get things done.
yes,
And it's like when you're working that hard and basically like setting yourself up for some burnout, that's when it's like, okay, let's try to make a change before we get to burnout. But oftentimes, I think a lot of times people are looking for support when they've already hit that wall and they're like, I need something new.
mm-hmm.
Um, and I think the thing with like burnout and a lot of the folks I'm supporting is when you're trying 2 to 3 times or 10 times as hard to get stuff done, if people are only seeing the end result, like they see the finished product, they see that, you're getting to your work projects done, you're getting the kids to the sporting events, they're seeing the finished shiny product. They're not seeing underneath the iceberg, like all the struggle that it took to get there.
Totally,
So I think a
totally.
lot,
Oh, sorry, go
sorry,
ahead.
I was
I
just
was just
going to say,
agreeing with you. I was like, yes, keep going. Like, yeah,
yeah. So I think a lot of times people are like, nobody knows how hard my life is except for me.
mm-hmm.
Or like maybe there are a few people in your inner circle who
Mm-hmm.
are like, yeah, this is not sustainable. We need to like, how can I support you? How can we make this change? But I think that I loved your email today. Like I said earlier, when we were chatting on my podcast, like your email newsletter is one that like comes to my actual personal email inbox because it's
I
so
have
good.
thought about that, you saying that at least probably once, if not once every day, once every other day. Since you said that, it meant so much to me that you said that. You said it on your show publicly, like ladies supporting the ladies. And like also too, it's just nice to know that, it means so much when somebody's like, oh yeah, your journal prompt today was about blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, read them. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Well, because especially as like business owners, sometimes we're putting stuff out there and we're like, is this connecting with anybody? Like, is anybody
Absolutely.
listening? Is anybody reading this? Like,
Am
but
I
then you get,
screaming out into a void?
right, right. But then you get like this, somebody reaches out and they're like, okay, I'm like interested in working with you because like of this thing that you said that
Yeah.
connected with me. I get this all the time. I thought I was the only one who
Yes.
XYZ.
So
And it's
much.
like, no, there's so many people out there because society is not built for
Mm-mm.
neurodivergent brains. It's
No.
not built for us to work at the pace that we think we need to, right?
Mhm.
I was just talking about this with a client today, actually, that like when you get something done, the initial thought is like, okay, what else can I get done? We do more to do more. And it's like,
Yes.
you slow down and just enjoy what you accomplished or enjoy the process of what you just did. Like, because that helps with the burnout.
I literally have a note. I did come up with like a couple of little touch points that I may or may not, but you know how you and I talk. We're just going to be talking. But literally, I love that because I talked about productivity versus peace was one of my topics that if I had a chance to get around to, like the hustle versus healing of it all. And it's so true. Like, because we're focusing on that fixing the executive dysfunction instead of accepting it and I've done this, which means now I have to do that. Like work begets work. And instead it's like, well, get the work done and then take some of that time. And it's so hard to divorce yourself from that narrative.
Yeah. And productivity is like a word that I have a really complicated relationship with, like
Absolutely.
personally and with my clients, because I think a lot of times people are like, well, how can I be more productive? And I'm like, is that what you really want? Like, what is your definition of productive?
Hmm.
Like, and are you giving yourself credit for the things that maybe society is not, naming productive? Like, you
Hmm.
had a morning, like I love that productivity versus, did you say peace?
Uh-huh. Peace.
Yeah. So it's like if you have a peaceful morning, like I did today, I like read on the couch. I drank my coffee while it was still hot. Like it was like, right, like just like, oh, this is so nice. But the
Yes.
internal thought that automatically pops up
Hmm.
is, well, you should
Yep.
be doing something right now. Go be productive. And it's like, well, this is productive. I'm setting
It,
myself up for
yes.
my day.
Rest is productive. I talk about this with clients a lot about because sometimes the idea of like activity planning, which is a thing that kind of originated from depression, of like get up and have it on your calendar that at 7 a.m. you will put on new pajamas that are clean that you didn't sleep in. Just those kind of things that help us to feel more likely like the action before motivation of it all. But it works really well with executive functioning as well, and saying like, I'm going to do this thing. If you put on your calendar, if that is just too much of a struggle for you right now because you can't enjoy sitting on the couch reading because your brain or the self-talk and the shame of it all, like putting it
Yeah.
in there because you can remind yourself every time, like, I booked this 30, 45, 60 minutes for this purpose. I deserve it. It's that self-talk piece as well. And then eventually, hopefully, not needing to have it be so regulated. But look, therapy, change, all of that can and kind of is necessary by nature tedious in the beginning, and that's okay. And then we hopefully get into that pattern and using those things in those important ways.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point of like that you're protecting this time for yourself, like it's serving a purpose. I
Hmm.
think like a lot of times the clients I'm working with are like, well, I'm so overwhelmed and I have so much to do and I'm constantly trying to catch up that
Yes.
the idea of slowing down is counterintuitive or
Abhorrent.
or yeah, or like adding something else to my plate is impossible because it's so full. But it's like adding rest or giving yourself permission to slow down, even if you can't start with that 30 minutes, like, but giving yourself that permission of 5 minutes of peace is going to
Hmm.
create more work productivity in air quotes. Right. Like the 5 minutes of peace is productive.
Yes.
And then mentally, you're going to have more clarity, more focus, better energy to do the thing that your brain is focused on checking off your work to-do list or your, personal to-do list.
It's so important that you talked about. I love this. I love talking to you so much. I'm obsessed with you. This is so great because another thing that you mentioned earlier, I'm like, I got to make sure I come back to that. And here you've brought me right back to it so beautifully, is the idea of when you're working. That is literally in one of my trainings. It says like on average, I love that you said, because you're like 2, 3, 10 times. Like on average, a person with ADHD is working about 5 times harder than their counterparts with neurotypical situations, because we're here, we're there, we're scattered, we've gone over here, we've come back, and da da da, and da da da, and da da da. And that's why you see higher levels of suicidal ideation, death by suicide, comorbid, or obviously like dual diagnosis with other mental health concerns, because when we feel so chaotic and twirly, it's so hard. So in this situation, when you've got these moments of intention, you're still getting the same amount done, which, let's be honest, we need a paycheck. So we do need to check off some of these lists. We do need to have the air quotes productive,
Mhm.
but the definition there is that you're doing it with more intention and more focus because you're rested and you're not burnt out and you're not frazzled. You are frazzled. You're not frazzled. And that is it. And then that does beget more time because you're not doing 2, 3, 5, 10 more times work than other people, whether or not it's iceberg or literal, like underneath the duck and the pond, right? Or
Yeah.
everyone can tell that you're going overboard. Absolutely. And that is it.
And I think you brought up an important point about like the mental health piece of all of this. Cause
Hmm.
like, so I'm a coach. I'm not working in the mental health like
Right.
realm, but I think that is something that a lot of times my clients are also seeing a therapist at the same time
Yeah.
because they're working through that big emotional, all that stuff. And that is time. Like, one, you deserve that. And
Hmm.
two, it's supporting not only current you, but future you, because it's like you're creating this space for yourself where you can kind of like have that peace, that slow down. Okay, how can I process this? What am I learning about myself? And then once you've created that like mental foundation for yourself, mental health foundation for yourself,
Hmm.
then there's more space to do the like concrete, what tool is going to help me get started on this?
Right.
Or I'm someone who can't keep track of time. Like that mental health piece really has to come first
Right.
before you try to change up your schedule, like, or a new routine or like that. They go together, but that mental health piece is so important.
It is. I don't want to use I'm going to talk about a gun for just a second, but like it's like putting a band-aid over a bullet wound when you haven't understood like where the bleeding's coming from. And so we can keep trying to I don't know, I shouldn't use a physical body example on a mental health podcast, but like we're trying to just like put repair. Oh my gosh, you know what? Instead, let's use Encanto, right? Like Bruno's in the background just patching up walls, cracks in the house and whatever, but we haven't taken a second to see like what's actually going on and what's causing that to happen so we can stem the flow of the cracks, and instead we're just covering. And it's not to say that you can't do anything right now. Of course, like get started on
Right.
trying something.
Yes.
And the coaching is so important. And let's also kind of figure out where things are coming
Yeah.
from whence they are coming.
That is a good visual of Encanto, of like trying to cover things up, because that's very in the moment, like
Mhm.
trying to problem solve. And like a lot of my clients talk about this, like chronically behind, chronically trying to catch up. And so
Mhm.
this idea of pausing in that moment to be like, okay, let's look at, I haven't seen the movie in a long time, but your visual, like, let's look at the wall
Mhm.
and look at the big picture for a second and get an understanding of what's going on
Mhm.
before we go in and try to like patch things up, just whatever's in front of us.
Mhm.
Uh, so I think that is like that pause creates space for peace. And
Mhm.
then peace, like you said, opens up space for that quote unquote productivity that that
Yeah.
we need in our lives still.
Yes. Because y'all, hear us say, we all need a paycheck. It's not just like go be your ADHD self and live in nature. And unless you're independently wealthy, in which case, like, let that neuro, I don't know if we're allowed to say neurospicy anymore. I love it and I identify it, but I understand that it upsets other people because it feels like disrespectful or denigrating to them. But I think it's beautiful because it's just a catch-all rainbow. But go live your most neurodivergent, beautiful self and get what's done is done and get. But I actually, so I've started a garden blog recently. And so now on the Instagram on that page, it's just gardening, it's just baking, it's such good energy. And I've seen so many people. I guess the algorithm also knows that I work in this space, and it does talk about people who are like they are in their neurodivergent space, but they're also naturally living and out and da da da. And so it's like this, the ADHD piece isn't a concern for me because my air quotes productivity isn't time bound of I've got this thing to do at 11 and this deadline is tomorrow and da da da. It's like, did I water the plants today? Have I harvested my tomatoes? Like that can be done at 10 a.m. That can be done at 10 p.m. Generally speaking, some garden guru out there is like, that has to be, don't water the plant. I know, but like generally speaking.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we know that we have to have our paychecks. We have to keep our jobs. We don't want to piss off our coworkers. That's a big one too that I talk about with clients a lot is their shame that they keep letting people down and having to remind and reframe of the self-talk piece of like there's no malice here, there's no bad guy here. Of course, you're holding yourself accountable. We're trying new things, but you beating yourself up doesn't make this happen any smoother and it doesn't make anything else better.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, that self-talk piece, I'm like a broken record on this, but the
Get it, get
self-talk,
it, get it, get it.
yeah, self-talk is the foundation of executive functioning. And so if your brain is in a shame spiral, or like the guilt is really, really heavy, then it becomes extremely hard to use the tools in your toolbox to take action on the things that you want to do, even if that's a conversation with the person who you're feeling like, oh, I let this person down again, or oh, I
Yes.
showed up late and they're assuming I don't care. And it's like, no, I tried so hard to get to this appointment on time, and my executive functioning literally couldn't let me get here on time today, but I care so much about it. Right.
Yes.
Like, and
Yes.
so
That time blindness is a real thing, y'all.
super real, super real. But I think like that self-talk is so important, because it's like we have to look at that first. We have to be able to kind of put those thoughts on trial, challenge those thoughts a little bit. Maybe there is like, yeah, there's some validity to, if I'm constantly late and so I do feel bad, like there's some
Hmm.
validity there, but it can't be all or nothing. It can't be 100% bad.
Hmm.
So creating some space for yourself to be like, okay, I know I want to get to this appointment on time. How can I communicate what's going on with this person? Because communication is executive functioning skills. That's speech language pathologists. Just a quick shout out to that profession. Um,
Hey.
it's such a broad profession, but I met with somebody recently And like she specializes in executive functioning and language and conversations and all, like
Hmm.
it's so magical. And so like, right, we have to plan what we're saying, how we get it out, like our communication styles, all of that. I'm no expert in it, but speech language pathologists are wonderful for that.
Yes.
Um, but executive functioning impacts our relationships. And so how can going back to, I'm like, where did I start this? But like that self-talk piece impacts our ability to take action and it impacts our relationships. And so it's all interconnected.
I mean, as a social worker, I'm all about person and environment, and I also recognize we as humans, we are us in our environment as well. Of we don't operate in silos. So I think I've said this on your show of like when I'm talking to my dietitian, I can't help but talk about my mental health that week, or my exercise, or did I nap instead of working out, and then how did that impact? Because otherwise, to just be like, did you eat vegetables today? No, how are we going to move forward if we don't talk about kind of the reason behind and what led to that? And so it's so important for us to allow ourselves the space and time to take a step back and
Mm-hmm.
think and look at the bigger picture of us and all of our beautiful components. And I
Yeah.
love the social interactions piece is so meaningful to me. And I'm so protective of my kids. Like I've never said their name on the show. Everyone knows that I've got a 3 and a 5 year old at the time of recording, and I really don't want to say too much about them. And if he ever wants to come back and come for me, he is so welcome to. But I really want to share like this week, my son was talking about like he didn't want to go to school. He's in kindergarten. He said it's too judgy, which also LOL to the fact that my 5 year old said judgy. I was like, where did you learn that word? I guess it must have been me. Because be curious, not judgmental. I don't know. I don't know where he learned the word
Yes,
judgy.
good social, like social emotional awareness going on.
Yeah,
That's
but
yeah.
yeah, I also was like, you're a dang genius. But anyway, so I had reached out to his teacher and was like, what can I, and he mentioned a couple of, he said, I don't have any friends in my class. I have friends in the other classes, but not in mine. And gave me some examples, which again, I don't want to try to get too granular and too much of his information shared. And but talked to her about that. And I actually asked a friend of mine whose child is also in the room, and she mentioned, yeah, my kid says sometimes your son gets in his face a little too close and is a little too loud. And I was like, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Again, I could go into so much more detail, but I'd like if everyone will just give me the grace if there's more to this story, but I don't want to get too much more into it. But it was so interesting because I like have my ADHD clinical services provider training, and I went back into my notes and I was like, I remember this conversation. What is coming to me right now? What is happening? And so I actually went back and found it, and I took a picture of my terrible handwriting and sent it to his teacher. It was like, if you can read this, but it was talking about like voice modulation and how it's so hard to teach that. And like medication, of course, because this is a biological difference, medication can be so helpful. It's hard to teach people to regulate their voices. Like, bless Austin, my spouse, he knows he's on this show. He knows, hey, buddy, hey, honey. So I'm gonna say that there are many times I'm like, you're yelling. And I'm like, and then he'll just bring it right back, and then he'll just keep talking. Um, but thank you for allowing me to kind of go on that tangent to come back to this space of the social interactions piece. We know so often that we've made some sort of social faux pas outside of the normal and expected behaviors. And so you'll notice too some isolation and pulling back and away from that because we know we've made the mistake, but we don't really understand how to rectify it or how to regulate it in that way. So then we just start pulling back from the interactions. And that again can cause some of that issue, which is exactly what my 5 year old did earlier this week of just like, well, I've made some people mad and they've also made me mad to, right? Um, so let me just not go.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that social interaction piece is so difficult. I'm wondering in your coaching program, like, how do you help people kind of walk through some of that?
Yeah, I think the social interaction piece hasn't come up quite as much in, so I do one-on-one coaching and I have a coaching membership. I've
Hmm.
definitely so there's been different levels of conversations between like in my one-on-one work with people, we're getting into the nitty-gritty of, what's going on in their life.
Yeah.
My coaching membership, there's a space where people can ask questions and like basically like crowdsource, hey, has anybody else experienced this? And it's like beautiful
So
because
beautiful.
again, so many people are like, I'm the only one who's experienced this. And so I think in the which you're not, I think where I've seen people ask this question in my group coaching program and in one-on-one, is more around like if you've like missed an opportunity with somebody, like if you're like, especially in a professional setting, like, oh, I said I was going to said I was going to send this resource to them by Friday, and now it's been a month and a half and I haven't sent it. And like this feeling of I've let them down. I'm not good at my job. They're thinking all of these things about me. Like, how have other people navigate? One, has anybody else experienced this? Which, yes, lots of people
Yes,
chimed in.
yes, yes, yes.
Two, what did you do? Did you just like ghost the situation? Or like, how did you come back and be like, hi, sorry, I have been like radio silent for all this time. Like, here's the thing I said I would get you in a couple of days, a couple of months later.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think like that's a different type of communication and a different type of kind of like social like interactions.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there is some of that like emotional sensitivity that a lot of my clients have talked about, like that they feel things so much bigger,
Mm-hmm.
and that things just, you know, are more impactful for them. They're like, maybe somebody else would be like, oopsie daisy, like here's that thing, I forgot to send it to you. But like they're spending hours, weeks thinking about this, ruminating on this, and
Mm-hmm.
then trying to navigate the social piece of, okay, I want to send an email. How do I word this without spending 4 hours on it and having a back and forth with ChatGPT, which ChatGPT can be great, but I've also seen it be like, well, can you come up with the perfect email?
Right.
Like, how can we make this more perfect? And it's like,
Yes.
you know, what's the intention behind the email? Are you making that, are you hitting that intention? Does it sound like you? Can you hit send?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think I've seen it a lot with my clients around like when there's been this like social ghosting of
Yes.
like stepped away, how can I come back? Uh,
Yes.
yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and that's interesting too, like you said, when we hang on to something and it lingers and we need to approach it, but it's going to be uncomfortable, that again, that's just creating more anxiety than having dealt with the uncomfortable moment and then knowing how to proceed versus the what if and what if and what if and or maybe that too. And that nebulous space is where we find more anxiety versus like, yes, this is uncomfortable. This is awkward. I don't like it. You're yelling at me. Like that's there's anger here now. But again, like then we're not wondering and going ahead and doing it. And easier said than done. I'm certainly I don't. I'm the arbiter of all that is solution focused and direct conversation. I definitely have things that I keep putting off, but um, generally speaking, that's the ideal. Is how we can find ways to not keep hanging on to those things.
And that's something I talk about a lot with clients in different contexts, but this idea of like we're constantly navigating discomfort. And there's kind of, I mean, there's more than two, but there's kind of two types of discomfort in this situation. The discomfort of waiting to do the thing and like thinking about starting or ruminating on it, or like, you know, it's in the back of your mind, it pops up every once in a while, like I'll use the word avoidance, even though it's not my favorite, but like the avoidance of the thing. There's that discomfort. And then there's the discomfort of actually starting. And that's, I think, like for a lot of people, this aha moment of like, well, I'll just wait until I'm ready, or I'll wait until I feel better or more comfortable. And yes, there's definitely like this, we want to be in a good headspace and a good emotional
Yes.
space, take action on things. We don't want to be trying to force ourselves to do something when we're at, you know, an extreme emotional state. But that is like this idea that I talk about all the time where it's like you're almost choosing your discomfort of like I'm sitting with the discomfort of not doing anything, or I'm going to take some activation discomfort knowing that it's going to be uncomfortable, and then that there's hopefully a sense of relief once you've started,
Yes.
because our brains are trying to protect us. They're like, don't do the uncomfortable thing, don't start, don't send the email,
Yes.
don't
Yes.
whatever it is.
Yes.
But don't, you know, going leaping back to the example you gave of like, don't be near the kids that, you know, that there's this, you know,
Mm-hmm.
social discomfort with. So our brain is trying to protect us, which is valid. But then it's being able to say, okay, is this something that I can like pull some tools from my toolbox that I can give myself some reframes and reminders on and work through that discomfort? And our brain makes it out to be way worse than it's going to be because it's protecting you. It's like, this is a lion, this is a tiger. And then you're like, this is an email with a kind person on the other end who I hope can be understanding of the delay
Mhm.
in my response or whatever it is.
Yes.
Um, and so
Well,
I
and
think like,
again, you're taking responsibility for that too. You're not saying I have ADHD and therefore you're not allowed to be upset and therefore I can have as much time as I want and so on and so forth. There is accountability there. So in a solution focused, accountable way is where we're moving forward.
yeah. And I think that can even be space, like depending on the situation, sometimes we're saying sorry. Like if the situation does like, yes, I want to apologize here. But in other situations, it's like, do you need to say sorry or can you say thank you? Like,
Mhm. Thank you for your, yes.
thank you so much for being patient with me. This took me longer than I wanted to get back to you, but here's the information we talked about. Looking forward to reconnecting. Like, thanks again. And I personally have gotten those thank you emails, like, thank you so much. Like, sorry this took so long, but thank you for understanding. And
Mhm.
that email, I'm always like, oh, like, great. We're glad this is like still a thing that we're working on. Versus like when I've gotten emails or when I've even drafted a first version of an email being like overly apologetic or here's what's going on in my life. It's like, we don't necessarily need that like context, depending on the situation. But I
Yeah.
think like there be a lot of grace in like saying thank you versus apologizing.
I love that because I know I say sorry too much, therefore my children say sorry too much, my mother says sorry too much, and we try to hold each other accountable. And I love the idea of, again, I'm accountable. I'm acknowledging there was a breach of some sort of protocol or the agreement that we had. And I love that. Like, title of ep, do you need to say sorry or do you need to say thank you? Like, that's such a big space. And again, it comes back to the self-talk piece that we talked about. Do you constantly feel that urge to apologize for your being in
Mm-hmm.
some sort of way? And the answer, let's start today with being, no, I don't need to apologize for this. I'm
Yeah.
aware and moving forward, I don't need to apologize for my neurodivergent beauty and self.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that can be, it's a practice, like with
Yes.
anything. If your brain has been wired to apologize and you've been saying sorry constantly, like that means that that's your brain's autopilot. And
Yes.
so anything, it takes time and practice and patience and kindness with yourself to pivot to, oh yeah, I'm trying to remember to say thank you, or I'm looking for opportunities to say thank you.
Mhm.
um, or even just like reframing it for yourself of like, I don't need to feel like your feelings are valid. Yes. And can you like do something to help you work through it so that you don't feel, and that's where the therapy can definitely come in of like, okay, how do I not let this hang over me for the.
Mhm. I love that so much. You said autopilot, and this just came to me like the visualization of like reprogramming your autopilot. And if it were
Mm-hmm.
easy, we'd already be doing it. And if it were so obvious, we'd have already thought of it. But we're talking about it now of like, I've got clients of all ages, and I'm like, you've been doing this for 63 years. Like, it's not, yes, of course you kept doing it between the last 7 days since we met. But the
Mm-hmm.
question is like, we're thinking about making changes, or we're just having an awareness that it's happening. And even if everything else was the same, except you had a thought of like, oh, that was me doing that again, that's huge
Yeah.
because that awareness is there and you're naming it and you're aware of what's happening. And so for those of us who are out there like hesitating to send that email, like, yeah, you know what? Give it a read again. Is it a terribly apologetic tone? Are you apologizing for your existence? Go ahead and rewrite that and say thank you for your patience and so on and so forth. But and I think it's important too, like I talk about the importance of language and what words we choose. And it does feel again tedious and mincing words sometimes, but it's the same as like I should do this or I shouldn't do that. It's like I would like to start doing this because is the same thing as saying should, except should is a judgment. And I would like to start doing this because is a solution focused ideal and goal. And we're getting closer to the idea of like, which I'm going to talk about SMART goals in a minute of like, that's the difference. And when you can
Mm.
parse it out like that, how am I talking to myself? What am I putting into my brain, into my universe around me?
Yeah. Well, and that's why there are stages of change too, right? Like it's like, there's
Mhm.
5 stages. Oh, let's see if I can remember them. Pre-contemplative, contemplative. Oh no.
Preparation.
Preparation, action, and maintenance.
Mhm.
Thank you, Meg.
Yes.
Um, and so, and it's
I'm a licensed chemical dependency counselor. That
yes,
is burned into my brain. And then of course we've also got relapse, which is a an arguable piece, but we don't need to get into that. That's not the topic of today's discussion.
not, and it's not always linear. It's like sometimes you're like waffling between
Okay.
contemplation and action. And so it's like that's why change takes time. And that's why rewiring that autopilot takes time because it's like your brain is working through a totally new process. And that's why the words you use are so important because you're like trying to be your own cheerleader through that, like
Yes.
supporting your wherever you're at.
Yes.
Like, oh, today didn't go the way I wanted it to. And here are some things I can give myself credit for.
Yes. Oh my gosh, it's so important. I'm excited about that to be able to continue to express this to people of like it's okay to not be perfect. I actually had a client once and again, no identifying information, but I had said something about like, "Oh, you're avoiding that because of your perfectionism." And she was like, "Ha, Meg, you know me well enough to know I am not perfect." And I was like, "No, no, I'm talking about your all or nothing thinking. That if
Yeah.
you are not perfect, therefore you don't deserve XYZ." And it
Mhm.
was like light bulb moment of like, no, of course. And hopefully those of us were learning that perfection's not real and progress is, of course. But that idea that if I can't be everything and everything to everyone at all times and on time and never have a misstep, then I am unworthy or insert other negative words I'm not even going to say out loud because I don't even put that in the universe and
Yeah.
being able to step back of like, here are the things that I am doing well, and here's where I'm being amazing, and here's what I offer to myself, to my family, to my core group of loved ones, to this job, to all of those things. And here's space for improvement. But
Yeah.
again, and that's what I was going to talk about. Do you use SMART goals or do you have another type of goal that you all talk about?
I it's like probably a variation of a SMART goal. I think sometimes
Mhm.
for some of the folks I'm working with, SMART goals can feel really rigid.
Sure,
And I think
sure.
some brains like a formula and
Yes,
like a clear plan. And so I think for some people, SMART goals can be really
sure.
powerful.
Can be.
And and then I think for some people, SMART goals can not be the right fit, especially like I think if you're working through burnout or if you're like stuck with some perfectionism, it can be like, oh, well, I didn't do my SMART goal to a T and therefore I should stop working on the goal. Um,
Again, all or nothing thinking. And
and
the
I
origin of that and the participation in that and saying like, well, if I didn't do it, then I was going to work out 5 times this week and I missed Monday. And if I didn't do Monday, then I can't do 5 days. So I may as well not do it. No, baby, your body still feels Tuesday. Go do it.
I think a lot of people who have all or nothing thinking,
Hmm.
one, don't realize it,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
two,
yes.
don't think of it as a form of perfectionism because they're like, well, not I'm not perfect. Nothing is perfect. And I'm like, well, that thought alone makes you a perfectionist. Like that, right? Like if you're like a lot of my clients where it's like that same thing of I want to do something every day for it to count. Or if they're setting like a measurable goal, well, I
Uh-huh.
didn't hit my metric and therefore like I'm back to zero
Hmm.
versus like giving themselves credit for the steps that they did take.
I have this
So
conversation with people a lot who want to do exercise, and I think it's a really good thing that's I think relatable to a lot of us, and movement, right? Whatever you consider. But I have so many people who have a perfectionist, but they wouldn't have acknowledged it until I called, like, hey, have you thought about this, by the way? Tell me how's this sit with you? That perfectionism, like if I don't work out for 45 minutes and I don't sweat myself through this shirt and I haven't burned 632 calories at least and da 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 da, then it's not a workout. And it's like, you know what else is a workout? A 5 minute core. Because you know
yeah,
what? Your abs still felt that. And your heart rate got a little elevated. And yeah, maybe you didn't sweat and maybe you didn't need to take a shower after it and da 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 da. But you know what's cool? That you did something. But there is that perfectionist piece as well. And that applies across, I just, like I said, I think exercise and movement and working out or whatever word you want to use is something that so many of us who have the privilege to be able to move our bodies can relate to. And how do we pull away that perfectionism and that all or nothing thinking of if I can't do 45 minutes or I can't write the perfect email, then I can't send it at all or whatever
And
else that feels like.
that's where I like talking about the mixture of structure and flexibility. Because
Mm,
like so structure, we need a combination of both. And so like the structure of your goal might be I want to exercise or move or do XYZ.
hmm
And then that's kind of like the overarching umbrella. So the structure might be like the goal is I want to train for a 5K, and this is what running a 5K would look like.
hmm
Flexibility piece of it would be okay, didn't sleep well last night. My nutrition is off, and I don't have the energy to run today or to do my plan if it's a SMART goal, right? I don't have the energy. Today's not, I can't keep up with this training protocol. But the flexibility would be what is something that fits for today and still works towards my goal.
Yes.
So maybe you go for a walk instead, or
hmm
maybe give yourself credit for like if sleep and nutrition are off, you're like, okay, I'm going to bed earlier
Yes.
and I'm going to cook tonight instead of getting takeout.
Yes.
And those two things support my 5K goal, even if
Yes.
that's the plan for today.
Yes.
And so, like, you're still giving yourself credit, you're still moving that goal forward. And then you have to challenge your brain on, I didn't run today, so it doesn't count. Because it
Yes.
does, it's all supportive. So I think
That's
it's
again going
like,
back to that person and environment and then us not being in silos. Like I said, I've mentioned this so many times. I cannot speak to my dietitian without discussing what I talked with my therapist about that week and
mhm,
how I was sleeping and because it's not did I eat broccoli or not. It's
right.
literally so much more than that. So much more than that.
Mhm. Yeah. So I think that's like goal setting, I think needs to match like what you're saying, like person
Mhm.
and environment. Like goal setting doesn't need to be one specific way. If
Mhm.
you're someone who you're like, I like the idea of a SMART goal because it gives me some guidance, it gives me some clarity. And then how can you mix in some flexibility and like adjust for, you're not going to hit every day exactly right. Um, and then I think it's also like having like reframing what we define as like consistent. And I have this like non-traditional definition of consistent because I think we think like, oh, I have to do it every day or every week or every month. And yes, that is technically the dictionary definition of consistent. But I think whenever you step away from it or pause whatever it is that your goal is,
Mhm.
every time you come back to it, you're being consistent in coming back. And I think like that's a more powerful form of being consistent
Yes.
because if your goal is to run every day or every week, but it's monsooning outside or you get the flu or your kid is home for
Yes.
like unexpectedly and you can't go run for whatever reason, internal or external,
Yes.
that's like like getting back to running is a
Yes.
win.
Yes. Yes. And the idea of the language involved of I couldn't do it today because of a monsoon and I don't own a treadmill and I don't have access to a gym, but there's no negative self-talk related to that. And maybe today is a full rest day. Maybe today I did a 20-minute stretch instead. Foam rolling, by the way, you all, is beautiful. I literally have it on my little, like once a week, I'm going to try to start doing foam rolling for 10 minutes, right? And it's on my little board that I have of that helps me to remember my certain goals that I have. And that is that piece too. Like
Mhm.
some things are, if you have the flu, I know we have lots of, we're not going to get political, but like lots of conversations that don't make any more sense about medical science knowledge and historically, but like we know the best thing for you to do if you have the flu is to not work out. It's not like sweat it out, it's rest and relax and recover. So if you need to do something again, like maybe a stretch, or again, maybe you give yourself the grace to do literally nothing because your
Yeah.
body's trying to recover. Um, your kid's homesick, so you stretch. I mean, and then just that flexibility piece. I do love a nice, like, specific and measurable conversation about naming things. Like when a client comes up, what brings you to, oh, I want to be happy. Whew. Like
What is happy?
let's
Yeah.
let's define so many different things. But like
Mhm.
again, we're using the words with intention and figuring out that piece of it while peppering in tons and tons of grace and flexibility
Yeah.
because everything can't just be as such all the time. And the self-talk piece as well of you would encourage a loved one to do what we're discussing, and what is it that's preventing you from saying the same thing to yourself? Why do you have to be perfect? Why do you have to have that rigidity? Because of course you would tell another friend like, yes, it's monsooning outside, please don't go run. But
Yeah.
then for you it's like, and now I failed.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Again, that like autopilot response of like, these are the things that your brain has said over and over again. And to your point, we would never say that to somebody else, or I would hope not. Um,
Yeah, I mean some people out there might, but
yeah,
don't.
don't, don't. But it's like, could you extend the kindness you would extend to somebody else to yourself?
Yes.
And I want to circle back to what you said about specific, like using specific words and having a specific vision, because I do think that is super important
Mhm.
because oftentimes I think people think they're setting a goal when in actuality they're like, well, yeah, setting a goal. I want to be more organized. Okay, that's like a big, broad umbrella goal, but
Yes.
like we don't have any action steps or we haven't broken it down, and brains need clarity. And so if you're like, my goal is to be more organized or my goal is to clean the house, that doesn't give your brain a starting point, because I'm going to use a running analogy, because your brain is focusing on the finish line.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and you're like maybe not even at the starting block. Like maybe
You don't even have
you're
shoes on. You're not even in the stadium. Like,
in the parking lot in your street clothes and you're like trying to figure out how to get to the finish line. And
hmm,
it's like, okay, let's figure out first how to get to the starting block. And then let's think about what are some of the hurdles that you might encounter and
yes.
what's going to help support you in navigating that.
Yes.
And how can we take the first lap around the track
Yes.
before you plan on running your 5K in this metaphorical goal
Yes.
setting, also the
Yes.
literal running that we are talking
I
about.
was to say also people said that is some people's actual goal. And so that's
Yes.
great. And also whatever that looks like, that is so spot on again. And that's where overwhelm comes in. And then the cure for overwhelm is nothingness, which means we do nothing because we throw up our hands and we jut out our hip, to quote Jack McFarlane. Like we just give up. I don't know. I don't know what to do and I can't do it. And I'm feeling overwhelmed. So I'm going to sit down and do absolutely nothing. And then we literally are doing nothing. And again, I'm telling you all, like if you have 10 minutes to do a quick little workout, whatever, I'm gonna say workout, like whatever. I'm not a trainer and I'm not gonna tell you what to do.
Mhm.
And you ideally would have liked to have run 3 miles that day, but you only found yourself having 10 minutes. Your body still feels like that, feels that. You're still getting those endorphins make you happy, right? Like you're still getting
Mhm.
all of those things that are happening. And so just really running away from that perfection, taking things a small step at a time, very, very important, especially for people with ADHD, because that's how I mean, I told the story on your show and people have heard it here many times. Again, like you can't tell my 5-year-old to go clean his room because you'll walk upstairs 10 minutes later and find him playing Lego. You have to say, go clean up that corner where the dinosaurs are and put them in the bin. And that's
Mhm.
it. And yeah, he's got 18 other things that he's got to do. But if I say that, I don't know what to do. So no, like just get the dinosaurs cleaned up and then come back to me and get me, and then we'll pick something else. Like that same thing applies through everything. And yes, ideally, wouldn't it be nice if our brains worked in a way that we could just be like, I'm going to clean my room, and I'm just look at me cleaning it, and it's just, oh my gosh, this just makes so much sense to me. But that's not how we are. We're meeting ourselves where we are without judgment, and that's
Mhm.
how we're going to do it moving forward. And that's it.
Yeah. And a lack of clarity, like you said, leads to inaction. So, because that, like, the
Yes.
overwhelm of, well, what do you mean, go clean my room? Like, and so that clear example of pick up the dinosaurs, it's like,
Yes.
okay, I know exactly how to start. I
Yes.
know what it's going to look like when I finish. And
Hmm.
then probably more so for adults than for kids, but like that does create this like momentum of, okay, now I'm going, what else can I do next?
Yes.
Or you're like, I have full permission to stop because all I was focusing on was the dinosaurs.
That's exactly right. That I'm so energized by this conversation. I always love talking to you so much. I
Yeah.
was wondering if you ever, and I didn't prep you for this, but I was just thinking of like a coaching confession. I like, do you have any, do you have any things that you struggle, like that you recommend to people to do, but you
Oh,
struggle
yeah,
to yourself?
for
Or because
sure.
I always love, like I said, I love to be so transparent and be like, therapist, heal thyself. Is there anything that comes to you that's like, oh, I tell all of my clients to do the 5 minute rule, but I suck at it, or like,
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the biggest one that people come and ask about is how to stop doom scrolling as a
Oh.
form of like, well, one, just a thing that we do in life, and two, like I have something I want to do, but I'm doom scrolling instead.
Mhm.
And so I tell everybody, it is not your fault. They have designed the algorithms to hack our brains. Like the science behind scrolling is why, like it truly is a full, I mean, there's I'm it can be a form of addiction that like our brain is getting
Absolutely.
immediate dopamine. We get sucked in, and I mean, I think the DSM, I don't know if they've moved, if they have a technology addiction diagnosis yet, but I know that was like in conversation at some point. But I'm off topic. But the
I'm right with you.
doom scrolling is one that people ask about all the time. And I always tell them I will share tools and resources and some of the like science behind why this happens. And I'm also not cured myself. And so I think that's like it can be really empowering, like to understand, okay, here's why my brain autopilots to Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Reddit, whatever it is for you. And here's it's like it's a comfort, it's an instant dopamine, but everybody talks about this same feeling of like, I don't feel better at the end. Like I've never closed Instagram
Yes.
after a scroll and felt better.
Yes.
And so it's like I might feel good to start, but I always feel worse afterwards. And that's true for me too.
Yep.
And so this actually happened to me yesterday. I have lots of tools in my toolbox, like literal like app blockers. I've paid for stuff. There's no shame if you have to pay to block
Yep.
yourself out of your phone,
Yep.
do it. So I've tried a bunch of them, like because the novelty of it wears off, and then I move on to the next app blocker.
Definitely. Novelty.
Um,
Yes.
yeah. Or like I'll, delete Instagram from my phone and then re-download it, right? Instagram is my doom
Yes.
scroll of choice. Um, but it happened to me the other day. I had finished up work. It's sunny, blue skies, nice weather outside, and I had the intention of I'm going to take the dogs for a walk.
Mm.
But I had posted something and I was like, oh, let me just like get my quick dopamine hit to see if anybody on my work Instagram account has
Yes.
interacted with this. And my
Yes.
to go on for 1 second, like just to be like get my quick little like what like, and even my brain knows no, I've never done that. And I ended up in this like suction of a doom scroll, and in the back of my head I was like, I want to be walking the dogs right now, like why am I here? And so my like formula for getting unstuck, and this is what I help clients with for lots of things, not just social media, Instagram doom scrolling, is first you have to notice you're stuck. Like that's an important piece. You have to be able to name like, okay, right now I'm currently stuck doing this thing, or I'm stuck not able to start this other thing. So I was stuck in an Instagram doom scroll. I named it for myself because when we
Yep.
tell our brain what's happening, it feels a little bit better.
Yes.
And then even though it doesn't solve it, and then I was like, okay, well, what do I need to remind myself here? And like for me, it was reminding myself, like, I'm not going to feel, the longer I stay here, I'm not going to feel better. And what is going to help me boost my mood, boost my energy is going and taking the dogs for the walk. And so again, my brain was jumping ahead to like, oh, I have to get changed into like outside clothes because it's mud season here. I have to get them all ready. Like my brain was like kind of naming the discomfort of getting started of taking the dogs for the walk.
Yes.
And so I was like, okay, I just have to focus on the first thing is deleting Instagram and putting my phone down. And once I did that, I was like, okay, I know exactly what I need to do to get them out the door. And like once I was on the trail, I was like, I wish I had done this sooner. Like, why, right? Why did I spend that extra time looking at random accounts? So I'm not cured of the screen time doom
Yes.
scroll. But there is definitely a formula I try to use when I get stuck and how to
Yeah.
get unstuck. And it's something I talk about all the time with people.
Yes. I appreciate you sharing that and sharing your vulnerability because I think it's so helpful for people to hear us say like, yes, here are my suggestions and here is why that one doesn't work for me. But again, nothing can work for everyone anyway.
Now,
So even if I give somebody something, I may not use it, or I
yeah,
may use something that doesn't work for you that was is my bread and butter, and so on and so forth. So, all right, well, thank you again for the time. I really do feel like I need to have you come back on again, and we can just talk about like the dopamine economy and like how ADHD brains navigate like novelty, reward, and motivation, especially in a technological world, and like how we can try to figure out the difference between dopamine seeking and like a true passion and all of that. So we got, as you mentioned the dopamine, I was like, oh, I like really want to talk about that too. So next time.
next time.
So where can everybody find you? I'll put the links in the show notes.
Awesome. Yes. So my podcast is called From Stuck to Started. Meg was a guest on there. And so you'll be able to hear our chat on there as well. And then my Instagram is Executive Functioning First. My business is called Executive Functioning First. And I offer one-on-one and membership coaching.
Yes. And again, you mentioned it earlier, but I love the group again, that the validation that people feel is so important. It's not just you. We're all out here trying to do the same thing and struggling in many of the same ways. And it just can help people to feel more willing to try to make changes to run away from the negative self-talk, and hopefully get working on reprogramming that autopilot. Yes,
Yeah.
indeed. Yes. And then everyone out there, I hate to always have to do this, but you have podcasts, so I feel less awkward in front of guests. Please go out, make sure you like, rate, subscribe, give us a little like one sentence review. That's how the algorithm helps everyone find everyone. Please be sure to jump onto Sarah's show, do the same for her. Yeah, and all of this stuff will be in the show notes for links for everything. So be curious, not judgmental, and we will see you next time on the Perinatal Podcast.